My stepsister stole her own college fund and framed me for it, causing my entire family to disown me. 4 years later, she begged me to save her daughter's life, so I made her confess the truth in front of everyone. 4 years ago, I, 26 meters, was accused of stealing my stepsister's college fund. My family sided with her and kicked me out. Now she needs my help for her kid's medical treatment. I never had a good relationship with my stepsister Emma. 24F. Everything changed in my life after my dad passed away in a car accident when I was 10. It was just me and my mom for 2 years, and we were really close. She was my best friend, my support system, my everything. Then she met Richard at some work conference when I was 12, and within 6 months, they got married. I was okay with it because Richard seemed nice at first, and my mom was happy again after a long time. But then Emma came to live with us. She was Richard's daughter from his previous marriage and had been living with her mom until her mom remarried and moved to a different state. Emma was 10 at the time, and from day one, she made it clear that she didn't like me or my mom. She'd give us these cold looks when Richard wasn't around and act like the perfect daughter when he was present. At first, it was just small things. She'd mess up the house and blame it on me. She'd eat all the snacks I'd saved for later and deny it when I confronted her. Once, she broke an expensive vase while running around the house and told Richard I pushed her. Another time, she broke a window while playing baseball and somehow convinced Richard I threw the ball. But what really bothered me was how she'd manipulate my mom. She'd tell her I was mean to her when she wasn't around, that I'd threaten her and bully her. She'd even cry sometimes, putting on this whole act about how scared she was of me. None of that was true. I mostly tried to avoid her because I knew she was trouble. My mom usually didn't believe her stories because she knew what kind of kid I was. Quiet, kept to myself, got good grades, never caused trouble. But Richard always sided with Emma, no matter what. This created a lot of tension between my mom and Richard. They'd have long arguments late at night when they thought I couldn't hear. Richard would accuse my mom of being biased against Emma, and my mom would defend me, saying Emma was making things up. Over time, I could see my mom getting worn down by all the fighting. She started second-guessing herself, questioning whether she was being fair to Emma. Things got worse when we were teenagers. Emma started hanging out with a group of kids who were known troublemakers. She'd skip school, come home drunk, and throw parties when our parents were away. Somehow, she always managed to twist the story and make it seem like I was the bad influence. If she got caught drinking, she'd say I bought the alcohol. If she skipped school, she'd claim I pressured her into it. Richard would ground both of us, even though I had nothing to do with Emma's behavior. I tried to explain, showing them my perfect attendance record and good grades. But Richard would say I was just better at not getting caught. My mom tried to defend me at first, but Richard would get angry and say she was letting me get away with everything because I was her biological son. By the time I was in high school, I'd learned to keep my head down and stay out of Emma's way. I focused on my studies, got a part-time job at a local bookstore, and spent most of my time either at work or at my best friend Daniel's house. Daniel was the only one who knew what was really going on. Emma's behavior got even worse after she failed to get into any good colleges. She was smart enough but spent so much time partying that her grades were terrible. Meanwhile, I got accepted into a good state university with a partial scholarship. I could see how much this bothered her, how she'd glare at me whenever college was mentioned. The real trouble started 4 years ago. Emma had a college fund worth about $80,000 that her grandparents had set up for her when she was born. After taking a gap year and claiming she'd changed, she was supposed to start community college that fall and then transfer to a better school if her grades were good. Her grandparents had agreed to let her use the fund for this. One day, Richard was checking the account to arrange the tuition payments and discovered that all the money was gone. There had been several large transfers over the past few months, emptying the account completely. Emma immediately accused me of stealing it. She claimed she'd seen me sneaking around Richard's office, where he kept important documents. She said I must have found the account details and transferred the money to myself because I was jealous she had a college fund. And I didn't. I was shocked. I had no idea about any of this. I told them to check the bank records, talk to the bank and file a police report to prove my innocence. I even offered to show them my bank statements, but Emma had thought it through. She'd already set up fake evidence. She'd created a fake email trail showing I'd been asking about ways to transfer large sums of money. She even planted a USB drive in my room with screenshots of the bank account and documents showing how to access it. The worst part? My mom believed her this time. The evidence seemed so convincing, and it broke me. He knew how hard I'd worked to rebuild my life far away from my family. But then Emma told Daniel why she needed to talk to me so urgently, and Daniel decided I should hear her out. Emma's 3-year-old son, Liam, has a critical heart condition. He was born with a congenital heart defect that was manageable at first, but now urgently requires surgery. The doctors discovered the hole in his heart is expanding, and without immediate intervention, his condition will worsen rapidly. The total cost of the surgery is around $120,000. Their insurance covers only about half, and Emma needs to raise the remaining amount. She's already been denied loans from multiple banks due to her poor financial history. When Daniel first told me about Liam, I wanted no part of it. Emma had destroyed my relationship with my family, and I'd spent 4 years painstakingly rebuilding my life. But Daniel said Emma sounded truly desperate and kept calling him day and night. After giving it some thought, I agreed to meet Emma at a neutral spot, my office. I wanted her to see what I'd built for myself despite her attempts to tear me down. When Emma walked in, I barely recognized her. The smug, manipulative stepsister who'd caused me so much pain was unrecognizable. Instead, there was this broken woman, unkempt, exhausted, with deep lines etched into her face and wearing clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in days. The moment I closed the door to my office, she broke down, dropping to her knees and sobbing uncontrollably. Through tears, she told me she'd tried everything: applying for loans, starting crowdfunding campaigns, selling her car, asking for help from every friend and relative she could think of. She'd managed to raise about $20,000, but was still short by $40,000. She pleaded with me, saying she knew she didn't deserve my help after everything she'd done, but begged me to think about Liam. Then she showed me a picture of him, a small boy with bright eyes, lying in a hospital bed, connected to countless wires and monitors but still smiling faintly at the camera. She described how Liam can barely walk across a room without getting winded, how he can't play with other kids, and how his laughter is often cut short by fits of coughing. I sat there, staring at her and thinking about the wreckage she'd left behind. This was the woman who had lied about me for years, who turned my family against me and cost me my relationship with my mother. I thought about those nights I'd cried myself to sleep on Daniel's couch, the holidays I'd spent alone, and the countless times I wanted to reach out to my mom, only to remind myself she wouldn't listen. But then I looked at Liam's picture again. He was innocent in all of this. He didn't deserve to suffer for the mistakes of his mother. After what felt like hours, though it was probably just minutes, I made my decision. I told Emma I'd help, but only on one condition. She had to confess the truth to the entire family. She had to tell them she was the one who drained her own savings account and blamed it on me. And she needed to admit to every single lie she told about me over the years. She had to do it in front of Mom, Richard, her grandparents, and everyone else who had chosen her side. Her face went pale. She stammered, offering to sign a contract, promising to pay me back, or trying to negotiate another way out. But I stood firm. I told her I'd only help if she came clean to everyone, no exceptions. She sat there in silence, staring at the floor, visibly torn between her pride and her desperation. Finally, she nodded, saying she'd do it if it meant saving Liam's life. I made it clear I would transfer the money directly to the hospital, not to her, and only after she confessed. Before she left, Emma tried to apologize, saying she thinks about what she did to me every day and how seeing me succeed made her realize how much she'd messed up. I didn't respond. I just told her to let me know when she'd arranged a family meeting. After she left, I called Daniel. He thinks I'm being too generous, reminding me of all the ways Emma hurt me and asking why I'd even consider helping her. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm too forgiving. But this isn't about Emma. It's about helping an innocent child who deserves a chance at life. And if I'm honest, it's also about something more. Finally clearing my name and showing my mom who she chose to believe over her own son. I want Richard to know how his perfect daughter lied to him. I want everyone who called me a thief to know the truth. Emma texted later to say she'd arranged a family meeting for next weekend. Now, I just have to prepare myself to face my family again after 4 years. I'm not looking forward to it, but at least this time I'll be the one in control. Update 2. 1 week later, the family meeting happened yesterday at my mom and Richard's house. I almost didn't go, sitting in my car outside their house as all the old memories came flooding back. The last time I'd been there was the day Richard kicked me out. Daniel came with me for support, and I'm glad he did because I couldn't have handled it alone. Walking into that house after 4 years felt surreal. Everything looked exactly the same: furniture, same family photos on the walls. Though I noticed all the ones with me and Richard were gone. Everyone was already there in the living room: my mom, Richard, Emma, my aunts and uncles, even Emma's grandparents who had set up the college fund. My mom started crying the moment she saw me. She tried to hug me, but I stepped back. Richard looked older, more tired, his hair graying. He tried to say something too, but I cut him off. I told him I was only there for one reason: to hear Emma tell the truth. Emma looked like she was going to be sick. She was sweating, shaking. Twice, she looked at me as if hoping I'd change my mind, but I just stared back. Finally, she started talking. She told them everything: how she'd spent the college fund during her gap year on parties, drugs, and her boyfriend at the time. She'd gotten access to the account by stealing Richard's documents when everyone was asleep. When her dad discovered the money was gone, she panicked and decided to blame me. She explained in detail how she'd created the fake emails, how she planted the USB drive in my room, how she'd chosen me as the scapegoat, because everyone already thought I was a troublemaker, thanks to her years of lies. Then came the part that really shocked everyone. She admitted that all the stories she'd told about me over the years, about me bullying her, threatening her, being a bad influence, were all lies. She'd made them up because she was jealous that I got good grades while she struggled, jealous that my mom always defended me, jealous that I got into a good college while she couldn't. The silence after her confession was deafening. Her grandmother was the first to react. She burst into tears. Richard looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. My aunts and uncles were all staring at Emma in shock, but I was watching my mom. She had this horrible look of realization on her face. All those years of doubting me, of believing Emma's lies, of letting Richard kick me out, it was all hitting her at once. She started sobbing, saying my name over and over. Then everyone started talking at once. Richard was yelling at Emma, asking how she could do this to her own family. Emma's grandparents were saying they couldn't believe she'd blown through all that money and then blamed an innocent person. My aunts and uncles were all trying to apologize to me at once, but I wasn't interested in any of it. I took up my phone, pulled up my banking app, and transferred the money to the hospital account Emma had given me. The moment the transfer was confirmed, I got up to leave. My mom tried to stop me. She was crying, grabbing my arm, saying she was sorry, that she should have believed me, that she'd failed as a mother. Richard tried to apologize too. He said he'd write me a check for double the college fund amount, that he'd make it up to me somehow. Emma was still sitting there crying, saying she'd spend the rest of her life trying to make amends. I looked at all of them who'd chosen her new husband over her own son. Richard, who'd kicked out a 22-year-old without a second thought. Emma, who'd ruined my life because she was jealous. 4 years ago, I would have given anything to hear them apologize. But now their words meant nothing. I just walked out. Daniel followed me, and we drove home in silence. When we got to my place, he asked if I was okay. I told him I'd never felt better. For 4 years, I'd carried the weight of their betrayal. Now, they had to carry the weight of their guilt. Emma texted later to say the hospital received the money and Emma's surgery is scheduled for next month. She thanked me and said she'd spend the rest of her life trying to make it up to me. I blocked her number. My mom has been calling and texting nonstop since yesterday. Richard too. Even my aunts and uncles are trying to reach out. I blocked them all. They had 4 years to figure out the truth, to question Emma's story, to reach out to me. Instead, they believed the worst about me without a second thought. Now they can live with that knowledge for the rest of their lives. Daniel thinks I should at least talk to my mom. He says she seems genuinely sorry. But sorry doesn't make up for years of betrayal. Sorry doesn't give me back the family I lost, the relationships that were destroyed, the trust that was broken. Some things you just can't fix with an apology. Update 3. 2 months later, Emma's surgery was successful. Daniel heard it from Emma last week. Apparently, the doctors were able to repair the hole in her heart completely. I'm glad she's okay. Even though I haven't responded to any updates about her condition, she was innocent in all this. And that's the only reason I helped. My family hasn't stopped trying to contact me. Richard tried sending a check with interest for years, but I returned that one too. Then he tried sending it to Daniel to give to me. Daniel sent it back without telling me, knowing I wouldn't want it. Emma's grandparents showed up at my office building 3 times. I had security turn them away each time. They left letters saying they felt responsible for everything because it was their money that Emma stole. They said they should have done more to verify what happened instead of just believing Emma's lies. Emma's grandparents have cut her off completely. My aunts and uncles are taking sides. Some saying we should all move past this. Others saying they can never forgive Emma. Emma apparently moved back in with her mom in another state after the surgery. Daniel heard she lost her job because she kept breaking down at work, talking about how she ruined her stepsister's life. Her ex-husband won't let her see Emma except under supervision because of her unstable behavior. Part of me feels bad, but I got another promotion at work last week. I'm now heading an entire department. 4 years ago, when I was sleeping on Daniel's couch, I never imagined I'd make it this far. I did this all on my own without any help from family. I'm looking at houses in Seattle now. My company is opening a new office there, and they want me to head it. It would mean moving even further away from my family, which honestly sounds perfect. Maybe someday I'll feel differently about all this.